Hey guys, before the video begins, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone I've met over the last few days. There's been so many great people I've met on the stock.tf trade server, and it's just cool to trade with some of you guys, meet some of you, talk to some of you, and if you have no idea what I'm talking about, last video I mentioned stock.tf's trade server, unusual trade server by Smokey. And I mentioned this because this guy named Smokey is really trying to create this server for other people and for the community, and I really thought that was pretty cool. So a few days I've been on it and just meeting different people that have been coming on the server, and it's been awesome. So if you haven't seen the server, link will be in the description below. Come check it out, and I'll see you guys hopefully soon. Hey guys, it's TP. Today I wanted to talk about a very interesting discussion between Australiums and unusuals. We all know and love the Australiums and unusuals in Team Fortress 2. So I want to provide a very interesting discussion, why I think Australiums are better than unusuals. Now before we begin, I'm just going to be covering just some of the basics of why we buy things in Team Fortress 2, at least my opinion on why we buy things. If you disagree, I'm hoping you disagree, it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and I think I found some really interesting things to talk about. So the first thing was the numbers. And, we all buy things in Team Fortress 2 for primarily three reasons. The first is to look cool. I mean, who doesn't want to look cool? To fit in, to be popular. And we do that by two different ways. The first way is that we buy stuff that we know fits us and we know looks like us and fits with our personality and makes us look cool. And we know we look cool, and we'll buy things that are maybe a little bit more exclusionary or collective. And we'll have those things and we'll know we look cool, and that's kind of how we just rock it, that's just kind of going from a fashion sense. But also, when we buy things for the second reason is so that other people think we're cool. Obviously we buy things that we know we look cool, but other people want to recognize us and go, hey, you're really wearing something that's cool, you have an Australium that's really neat, or you have an unusual that has a really cool effect. And that's kind of the reason why we buy things, in my opinion, in Team Fortress 2. It's a very basic understanding of, psychology on buying and stuff. So when you start looking at that, you start to understand kind of, wow, there's tons of different effects in Team Fortress 2. I didn't even add up all the different effects, but there are 420 different unusuals with around 165,000 unusuals existing. That's a huge number. Like, I thought it was around 60 to 70,000 when I went to average it up. But when I went to add every single box on backpack.tf, and we're talking about 420 boxes here, I got to 165,448. Now, I could be very well wrong because I was adding this up at around 3 a.m., but, it still is around that number, and that is a huge number. Now, what about Australiums? Now, I thought Australiums had already a big number. When I was averaging it out, it was, I thought, approximately 40 to 60,000. And Australiums ended up being around 55,000 Australiums. Now, there are 19 different Australiums, meaning that number goes between 2 to 3.5 thousand per different Australium. Some have more, some have less, obviously. For instance, the Islander has only around 900 Australiums made of it, while the others have 2 to 3,000. So a very big difference between the Islander and the other rest of the Australians. And I'm not including the Golden Pan, because the Golden Pan by backpack standards is not considered an Australium, which is kind of weird, but I think it's a rare item in its own, and I think it's a god tier item that really no one knows what to deal with. But essentially, the argument I'm trying to say here is we buy things that are exclusive, that make us look cool, and not that unusuals don't, but unusuals are also really subjective. Going back to what I said about unusuals being, cool to us and then cool to other people, I really like the "it is a mystery to everyone" unusual effect, because it's rare. I've never seen it personally except for once on the other alternative effect of it, and I think it's a really cool effect. The same with I believe it is the disco skeleton effect. It's a really unique effect that no one really sees in Team Fortress 2. However, that effect just isn't popular and isn't really cool to anyone else but me. I'm sure there's some people out there that really like it, but I'm the only person that I know of that really likes the effect. But, you know, with Australiums, everyone loves Australiums. There's not a single person that goes, that's a bad Australium, or, you know, that's not a cool looking Australium. No, they all look cool. Whether you have a rocket launcher, which is the most expensive Australium at around 40 keys, I believe, or you have one of the cheaper Australiums, the Blutsauger or the Extinguisher at around 6 to 8 keys. I mean, you really can't go wrong with any of them because everyone sees this bright gold weapon and goes, man, that's a really cool weapon. Now, there is this debate between the new Dragon Slayer skin being the new, you know, cheap Australium, which, you know, I think it looks cool. It has somewhat of that sheen look to it, but it doesn't necessarily fit the golden aspect of the Team Fortress 2 weapon. And I think what will be interesting in the future is if they put in new skins or they put in new Australiums, more importantly, in Man vs. Machine or some other game mode, and really drive TF2's economy base back to Australiums. Because I think Australiums would be more expensive if people put more value in them. But people put so much value in unusuals. And that confuses me because unusuals, going back to what I said earlier, there's so many of them. The Blizzardy Storm effect has over 1,000 unusuals in that one effect. That's crazy. And I'm not saying it's a bad effect. It's the effect I have on my current hat. That and Frost are one of the two coolest effects. But, you know, it's just such a common effect that so many people have it. More than, you know, not more than technically Australiums, but you're going to see the Blizzardy Storm effect more than any other effect, other than, you know, a few other ones that exist. But it's just a really interesting concept to kind of see how people value just the purple text and the whole unusual aspect more than the Australium. Now, I do know the aspect that, you know, having Australium in a game versus having unusual won't get you a medic, but it's still interesting to kind of talk about this in terms of a, you know, psychological aspect, and also just kind of discuss it in terms of a, you know, value. What technically, if we put our value in what other people think of us and what we think of ourselves, unusuals aren't as wise because they're so subjective. What, you know, a high tier unusual with a low tier effect could be really expensive, whereas a low tier hat with a high tier effect could look really funny too. So it's just kind of funny to see both of those standards being subjective, but with an Australium, there's really no subjectivity. No one's going to go, oh, it's a bad Australium, or that doesn't really fit. I mean, it just looks awesome, you know? So I hope it provided some food for thought. I really found this discussion interesting, the numbers fascinating, the psychology really just interesting. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video very shortly. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and just thanks to everyone else who's just really helped this channel so far. Peace.